Good afternoon. Today, I am going to be discussing the topic of capital punishment and its moral considerations. Capital punishment or death penalty is defined as the deliberate execution of an individual as a legal response to a certain crime or acts of violence. While it is the intentional execution of another human being, it can be viewed as a necessary tool in the legal system to minimize damage and violence in society carried out by a disgruntled citizen. Capital punishment has evolved with the development of society and sovereignty, which has mostly been abolished in industrial heavy countries but is still functional in authoritarian countries like Iran, China, Nigeria, and Saudi Arabia, with the exception of United States and India. The abolition of death penalty is a factor of democracy, legislature, and part of eliminating cruel and barbaric punishments. Immanuel Kant's philosophical view was retributivism, which states that an offender should face legal punishment for their crime, which is why he believed that capital punishment is morally justified for the wrongdoing like murder, treason, or rape. In this speech, I will argue for the moral permissibility of capital punishment or death penalty through a utilitarian point of view. Many philosophers and societies believe that capital punishment should be abolished because deontology philosophy proves that capital punishment is an unnecessary commitment even if substantial deterrence of crime is proved, and that life imprisonment offers the same punishment without death. The argument that capital punishment is not completely moral is because in the imperfect legal system of the United States, there are death row inmates that are innocent, or there are inmates whose crime is small and their punishment immeasurable. Stryker thinks that life-for-life trade-off is unethical because killing a criminal for the murders of his victim does not alleviate pain of the victims, and it does not cause deterrence of crime or violent attacks. Hanta, on the other hand, attacks the argument of an act utilitarianism, stating that even though there are acts that do not lead to ultimate good, death penalty is immoral punishment because the intention of killing another human being by another human being is unethical. He argues that looking at historical context of capital punishment, which were public executions to deter citizens to commit crime and keep the society in order, the modern death penalty is private, censored, and only visible to a private audience, which does not help deter crime or fear of punishment for the public. Abolitionists believe that due to racial inequality and gender inequality, there is a bias in the justice system that leads to the death penalty of men more than women and of more colored people than Caucasians. While Stryker makes a comprehensive argument to show that capital punishment is immoral, I would like to argue that the degree of crime and unconstitutional behavior should determine death penalty for the criminal. The life-for-life trade-off can be viewed as permissible and moral when it results in saving of net value of lives. A jihadi terrorist named Qassab was executed in India in 2012 after being charged for bombing, murdering Indian citizens and police officers. According to the principle of equality, there should be a balance maintained in society. Brand, a rule utilitarian, attempts to explain how humans are rule-following creatures who only learn by sticking to the rules of society, implied and imaginative, and that an act is only right if and only if the rule would lead to a greater utility for society than other alternative options. The act of capital punishment is which one leads to prevention of further harm. For example, a criminal is denied death penalty on the charges of it being immoral and unethical, but if and when the criminal is let out of jail, he commits more acts of violence which leads to the loss of more lives. This is why capital punishment should be morally permissible. The morality of capital punishment is questionable on the basis, what kind of morality do you believe in? If you're a deontologist, death penalty will always seem like a loss of life, murder, or unethical killing. But if you're a utilitarianist, death penalty is morally permissible because it prevents further loss of life, gives satisfaction to the victims, creates balance in society, deters crime by discouraging potential criminals, and increases net value of life. Another argument would be that death row inmates have been proven guilty through various legal entities before being sentenced to death penalty, and the verdict is consistent among jurors and judge. One of Immanuel Kant's arguments states that when an individual has transgressed against universally accepted laws like murder, rape, terrorism, or treason, they have committed an unconstitutional act, hence giving up their rights and are bound to the mercy of law. Capital punishment is a last resort meant for criminals who have created fear, panic, chaos in society by destroying lives, committing unconstitutional acts, and capital offenses. Even on death row, inmates have a chance to talk to their lawyers, countersuit in light of new evidence, or change in the attitude of the victim. Abolitionists might have people believing that capital punishment is a cruel and barbaric punishment because it causes physical or mental torment, and life imprisonment serves the same purpose. I would argue that prisoners with life imprisonment sentences are caused much more mental and physical torment because they are locked up in tight spaces and penalized to the ends of their lives. Nowadays, prisoners are allowed to choose a method of execution, a lethal injection, hanging, or execution by a firing squad, hence are not in physical torment by the unknown. While on the other hand, prisoners have access to spiritual guidance or religious clergy from the day of their sentence to the minute before their execution, which would alleviate any of the mental discomfort they might experience. In a college classroom of 60% liberals and 10% conservatists ranging from different religious affiliations, 55% of the population believes that capital punishment isn't morally permissible on arguments ranging from the government should not decide the fate of an individual to it violates the right of life, whereas 45% of the population believes that capital punishment is morally permissible because criminals could continue to commit crime from within prison and their acts have destroyed lives which cannot be revived. In conclusion, the order in society needs to be maintained, and the government acts as a neutral moral agent that has the ability and power to enforce certain rules and regulations on the individuals. When an individual becomes a member of a particular society or country, they indirectly agree to adhere to the laws and be an upstanding citizen. Deviation from these laws and regulations can cause fear, panic, terror to other members of society, which is immoral and illegal. Hence, capital punishment should be morally permissible to maintain balance in society, deter crime and acts of violence, and act as a rule to lead the greater utility in case of no alternative available.